Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. As always, I am Mike Chisholm. As always, I'm excited to have conversations in this podcast for men, this podcast for where we love to talk and have conversations around the world of men's mental wellness specifically. Today is a really cool example of a guy who has taken things that he has gone through and used those experiences to help make the world a better place. The guy's name is Doug Lawrence. He's a former Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer or member, I should say. And he did that job for 25 years. After that, went into the idea of serving others in a different way. He's a mentor and has created actually TalentC.ca, which is a mentoring. Do I call it a platform? Sure, let's call it a platform. That's what we use in today's language. It's a platform where people can go and they can find a mentor, learn how to become a mentor, certified, and we go through what that is in this episode here. It's a very, very cool dynamic. The idea, we've talked about, had lots of coaches on the show, talk about mastermind groups and things for people who are out there that might just need a little bit of guidance. A mentor might not be what you think. You don't have to necessarily find someone that's in the same profession as you or the same, place in life as you. It's the idea of having somebody who jumps in your rowboat with you while you don't necessarily know where to go, helps you patch up the holes and figure out a direction to go. A mentor relationship can be very, very special. I know people who have, I've got mentors in my life and I certainly appreciate them. I am a mentor to certain people in their lives. And I can tell you from both sides, I appreciate it and I learn from both. Doug Lawrence is a very, very calming presence. He's very almost Zen. And he helps people deal with all sorts of things in the mentor-mentee relationship. We also talk about grief. He's got another book he's writing. He's written three books. The fourth one's about to come out. Number one is The Gift of Mentoring. The second one is You Are Not Alone. And the third one is Grief, the Silent Pandemic. And man, this guy's all heart. I just really appreciate the conversation. I hope you do too. Please enjoy this episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It, with our special guest, Doug Lawrence. Okay, Doug, really happy, really excited to have you here on heCast today. One of the things that I'm always, whenever I have somebody who served, and wherever that serving might be, it could be a first responder, it could be a, fire, ambulance, military, RCMP especially. We've had quite a few RCMP or law enforcement actually from around the world, United States, Australia, the UK, other spots as well. I just have to say thank you for your service. How long were you an RCMP member?
25 years.
25 years. And my word, the things that you changed. You finished in 99 though, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, you're going back into the 70s, and you're finishing at nearly the turn of the century. My word, the changes you must have seen in being an RCMP member for that long, and for our American friends, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That's our national police force. The changes that you saw in that time must have just been astounding.
Yeah, the short answer is yes, most definitely lots of change. And with that, of course, came a change in culture. And with that came challenges in getting people to buy into the culture. And part of that was as well, we didn't really do a good job of supporting our members who were experiencing traumatic events on a regular basis. And, we just didn't do anything other than, and one of the stories I typically will tell is that, I was in some places where I was there by myself. So I come back from going out on a traumatic event, and my coping mechanism or my solution to dealing with what I just had gone through was a bottle of Scotch whiskey, take the lid off, throw it away, and drink until you figured you got everything calmed down, and then go to sleep and get up and go through it again the next day. And that's just not right.
Yeah, Again, thank you for your service. Is just it's not enough to say because of what people have, the weight that they carry years after the fact. It's weird to say that now, you've been away from the police force longer than you were with the police force, which is a very interesting place to be. Yet at the same time, devoted your life to mentoring. I want to talk about that. Of course, I want to talk about that. It's how you've kind of aimed your life. The idea of mentoring, I assume that when you were there, I mean, you think about the idea of having a partner, being on a police force, wherever it is, the partnership is a huge part of the makeup of these police forces and whatnot. Was mentoring something that you were cognizant of while you were still an active member of the RCMP, or did that come after the fact upon reflection of a long and difficult career?
It's kind of both, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. Now, when I reflect back and I take, sort of kind of looked at those lived experiences, I was mentoring even, fellow members, if I worked with somebody junior to me, or I actually one of the places I was stationed in the Western Ireland, East West, whatever.
Mm.
Fort McPherson, I was mentoring some of the people that I worked with. I was put into a position of supervising these young members to get them ready for bigger and better challenges and stuff like that. And so I was mentoring at that particular stage. But the strange thing, like I tell a lot of people, is that I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I
It was
thought,
just,
yeah, and it was the same sort of thing when I left the force and I went into the private sector and I was working with people there. They'd come to me with an issue, and I'd say, "Well, come on and close the door, and let's talk." And we would talk our way through it. When they would come to the realization that they knew the answer already, they just needed somebody to kind of guide them where they could kind of get the closure that they needed on that particular situation that they were dealing with. So it was, that was sort of Doug's mentoring 101 part 2.3 or whatever. I was going the next step. And that's when I got into mentor certification, and the story goes on from there.
Well, we're going to go down that path, but I want to ask you about something that you said there. The idea that we already know the answer inside of us. I mean, I think that is a very powerful statement, and I think many times when we're going through something, we do know what the right answer is, and most of the time it's the harder choice, in my experience. But the idea that you put an exclamation point on having reassurance about that, having it maybe giving the validity to what that direction or place might be. I mean, many times, it's just below the surface of our consciousness. It might even be at the upper levels of the subconscious that we're even going through something that we don't even understand necessarily what it is. But then when we realize that we're not happy, most of the time we do know the answer. Would you agree with that? And is that something that you've actually, as you have professionally gotten into, helping people through mentorship, is that one of the things that you talk about a lot?
Yes. Yeah. I try to stress the idea that, inside each and every one of us is the answer to the problem we're trying to solve. And it's a matter of talking your way through it. And if you can do that and not bury your head in the sand and say, "Oh, I don't, I can't figure that out." But if you take the initiative to do so, the answer is there. It just needs to be kind of uncovered, pull back the covers, as I always say, and take a look inside to see what it is. And so, yeah, the answer is there.
Hmm. I think about the idea. I mean, I've done a lot of personal development through business and things like that as I've kind of moved through my life. And there's always been the idea of mentorship. That's always a big thing, but there's also been the idea of having like a mastermind type group. And I found that many times when you have a mastermind group, you've got people who are around that maybe you trust and respect, and you're able to kind of lay things out and get their perspectives and things like that. And I think that's a very, very powerful tool. Mentoring, I think, takes it to a different level. And I mean, when you think about mentoring, like, for example, you don't just work with the RCMP, you work with, anybody who really at the end of the day wants to improve their life, and they wrap their mind around the idea of mentorship. What in your mind is the difference? What's the difference between having a mastermind group and then having like a mentorship type relationship with somebody?
Well, the big difference is that it becomes the mentoring piece is very personal.
Hmm.
So, and you take a look at the definition of what is mentoring. Well, mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship where both the mentor and mentee learn and grow on a personal and professional basis. And I know, that just recently I've been working with people, and it was leadership mentoring is what we were actually experiencing. And it was a matter of using the Socratic method, so the question and answer approach to dealing with things. And it would be, simply by saying, okay, so what would happen if we were to do this, or this? What might the outcomes be? And then I use that technique, that sort of that pathway. I use that to get them to start to get the creative juices flowing, and then they would, they'd counter and they'd come back and they'd say, well, there's got to be an easy way to get the answer, and there is no easy way to get the answer, but you can certainly come very close to getting the answer if you take the right steps. And so it was kind of having those conversations, with this individual,
Hmm.
and then just being mindful of what's the outcome and which direction are we going, so that we don't get sidetracked.
So, like, I love when you talk about the definition of a mentor mentee type relationship. It's very much the way that you describe it as an iron sharpens iron experience. You both are growing. You
Yeah.
both are, moving forward, evolving. And I think that when people look at the idea of being a mentor mentee, in that dynamic, I think when they look at that dynamic, many times they think of power, I guess would be one of the words, like leadership. But from what you just described, the mentor really is only kind of a guide. They just sort of have the framework, and they kind of take the guide approach as opposed to the boss approach. Am I accurate with that? First off.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the one thing that a lot of people is that it it's more so about being that guide. And I'm glad you use that, terminology, because that's really truly what it's all about. Is my my function as your mentor is to know the questions to ask, to help, and then to be able to guide you, and to be able to realize that at the end of the day, when we go our separate ways, I'm going to have learned just as much as you did when you thought, what's going on, uh, because the more questions I ask, the more guidance I can provide, the bigger the span of growth that you're going to get to experience. And you will get that opportunity for all of that to grow and for that experience, but you have to be willing to take to go for that ride on the train, so to speak.
Um, the framework that you use to bring people on this journey, I know that you've gotten certified and whatnot, but then you went deeper and you've developed your own practice and program, and that's you can find that on talentc.ca. talentc.ca. You can go and look at this stuff here. I'm curious as to, as you were going down this path, as you were amassing all this knowledge and life experience and evolution through helping people help go through what they're going through, what was it about what you were doing versus what you wanted to do that was so what was the contrast in between those things?
The journey that I went on was predominantly driven by, believe this or not, I was job coaching university or college students, and the relationships had started out with, kind of the job coach sort of thing, and then it
Mm-hmm.
morphed itself into a mentoring relationship. And after I had done a number of referrals and stuff like that to help the young people, to get into the job market. After
Mm-hmm.
I had done a number of those, it was they who actually said, Doug, you should do this for a living. We can't afford to pay you, but I'm sure somebody can. And so I
Mm-hmm.
did some market research, long story short, and there was an opportunity when you looked at what the true definition of mentoring is or was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's definitely an opportunity that was there, but what was missing from all of this was to actually provide the certification for mentors, which is what I did 2 or 3 times now. We've developed, we've enhanced the curriculum that we were using to help people better understand the process techniques and all those steps that they can take in order to take what they've learned from a mentoring perspective and put it to practice.
There's a bunch of things in there that I would love to kind of go and explore a little bit. I don't know how many we'll get to because the conversation's organic and it's moving. But the first one I'm going to go to is you've had a lot of coaches on this show, a lot of coaches of all sorts of different modalities or directions, if you want to call it that. And I love that you made the distinction between a coach and a mentor. In your mind, how do they differ?
There's probably more similarities than what there is differences.
Okay.
I get asked that a lot, and there are certainly things that I do as a mentor that another person may take those techniques and apply those in the coaching world as well. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's coaches are predominantly, from my perspective, are predominantly when an employee has some performance issues and they need to structure a process. What's the workforce management type tools, and
Mm-hmm.
issues and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I see that fitting in there.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, I also accept and also realize that some of that can also be done by a coach. The ideal situation that I think organizations need to get to is they need to have both coaches and mentors as part of their HR type team.
Mm-hmm.
That because I've been brought into an organization where they had tried coaching, they had tried a number of different things, and they were actually, the next step was termination.
Right.
And they got a hold of me, and I said, I'll tell you what, I did my little 2 to 3 minute elevator pitch, and they brought me in, and I did 5 1-hour sessions with the employee, resulting in them becoming one of their top performers as a result of working with them and finding out what the root cause for the behavior that was causing all this turmoil. And so it was being able to get that into place and moving forward and do it in a fairly quick time slot. So
I love that you mentioned the time frame there too. Like the idea that a lot of people who are going through something major or thinking about, overwhelm. There's a lot of overwhelm out there, and the idea that it can happen quickly. For me, it's clarity. When I'm clear on something, I can usually make the moves necessary to kind of move in the right direction. Difficult as it may be, if there's clarity there, at least yeah, that's a direction to go into. I assume that that's a big part of this dynamic that we're talking about here, the idea of helping somebody get clear on where things are at.
well, because part of the mentoring process is to identify the goals that we're going to work on,
Yeah.
work towards, and those once we start on that journey, it's also to be able to understand the goals, but also understand the journey and how we're going to get there. And
Right.
clarity is definitely part of that. Because if the road ahead isn't clear enough for me to be able to understand, okay, where are we going and how are we going to get there, then I'm going to not be as effective, because a large part of what I try to do is customize the approach I'm going to take to each and every person so
Hmm.
that it's different
Hmm.
and it's customized or tailored to that particular person. And if we do that, then they being the mentee, they get more value add from the journey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As you were getting into this, uh, it's a weird question. It's not really, because, again, I go back to the dynamic of the mentor, the one who's guiding things, and I wonder about ego work. I wonder about like you're across somebody from the table from somebody who perhaps might be, at a quote unquote, in society standpoint, a higher station in life. That's the only way that I can kind of describe it. Maybe they're a really successful performer already. Maybe they're financially successful. I don't know what, might be athletically, whatever it might be. They're across the table from you. Did you have to learn any ego skills to be in that sort of situation, or is this entirely, completely sidetracked from that, where you come in and everybody is just on the same playing field right away?
No, it definitely, I wish that that was the case, but
Yeah.
it's not. And you're right. Part of it is taking is going through a process of reflection. And
Mhm.
it's so the first time that we meet, it may not go quite as well as I would hope. And so then that's where I go through what went well, what didn't go well, and what will I do differently next time in order to, to help guide us to where we need to actually go. And so that's all wrapped up in that whole process piece, so that, we make sure that we're generating value or value add, I guess.
Hmm. When you first started, I mean, one of the things, going through, one of the focuses that you're very skilled at is helping people navigate their way through PTSD. Do you still meet with a lot of RCMP officers to this day, or has it branched out from that and that's just kind of where it started? So maybe the audience might be a little different, where it's not so much police, but many of the things are the same when you're dealing with PTSD. It's a similar paths.
Yeah, it is, and the PTSD is it's still there.
Hmm.
I'm doing work with American Corporate Partners, which is an organization in the United States that helps military personnel transition from service to civilian life. And I can tell you without a doubt, those folks have had some horrific experiences. And, we spend time, sometimes it's more so on the personal growth. It's dealing with, you know, they've got post-traumatic stress, or there's a number of other mental health challenges that they're dealing with, and it's just a matter of us working through that together. In fact, I think I have on the 30th, I have a session with um, one of the military personnel from the US, and it's to watch this individual go through a growing time frame where,
Hmm.
we've talked about they want to they want to become an entrepreneur, they want to start their own business, they want to do a number of different things. And
Hmm.
so, it's me being there to support, guide, and nurture them along the way so that they, right? So,
Yep.
yeah,
So I'm curious about the pathways, the similarities, because you have somebody who has been through some of the things that you're talking about here, horrific, be it in the military service, RCMP, these places. You guys see some crazy stuff, right? Traumatizing to say the least. Traumatic is in the title. PTSD. Yet at the same time, we all as humans go through trauma, whatever that looks like. Could be big T trauma, little T trauma, whatever that is, right? And that trauma helps forge the narrative that we tell ourselves, our point of view, sometimes who we are, all of that sort of stuff. Sometimes it's in the background and we don't even realize what's going on. Um, I imagine that everybody has, even though the experiences might be different, I imagine that there are a lot of similarities as to how to get out and break free of some of that stuff. Would you mind sharing with the audience a couple of the things if you were to go through it and say, yeah, here's a commonality, here's a commonality, here's a commonality, that might help them. There's guys who are listening to this, Doug, that are right now in a spot, whatever that spot might look like. It could be a job loss. You talk about identity. Many times our identity is wrapped around what it is that we do. Could be a relationship. Same thing. Many times our identity is wrapped around a relationship. And then there's something new that's going to happen, and there's trauma that needs to be kind of released or rectified before we can really truly start to move forward. Can you talk about some of the things that you've found that are maybe not universal but are common?
I think a lot of it is workplace situations. So, you end up with workplaces that have a toxic work environment, and the employees don't know whether to stay or go. And if they do stay, then what does that mean health wise? Because a lot
Mm.
of them end up experiencing uh, significant changes in their health. I
Mm-hmm.
know I personally, with some of the grief, the not so much grief, but with the post traumatic stress that I struggled with, I still have flashbacks to a few situations that had taken place that back then we didn't have the tools to deal with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was alcohol, drugs, all those sorts of things that, you latched onto. That was your coping mechanism to be able to deal with that. But for those people that are, part of your listening audience, especially us men, it's two or three very simple things. And the first is just, it's okay to reach out and ask for help. That's you're not doing yourself any favors, or anyone around, including your family. You're not doing any favors for anyone when you keep all that stuff bottled up inside. We have to
Mm-hmm.
get all that negative energy out. And so, being comfortable enough to be able to ask, for help, being able to listen and hear. So if you're somebody that's helping somebody, what you need to make sure that you do is you need to listen and hear what they have to say, be non-judgmental, and recognize that, the conversation that you and I are having is confidential. And,
Hmm.
I shouldn't be taking a advertisement out in the newspaper to talk about what we're dealing with, because that's very personal.
Hmm.
And, you want to be able to deal with that. If you can find a support group that offers support targeted at people with post-traumatic stress, because I go down a different pathway at some stages where I talk about PTSD, but I also talk about grief, because we've
Yeah, we're
had.
going to get into that. Yep.
Okay, so the PTSD part is, a lot of a lot of us went through times where there was no support mechanism that we could access, and so we created our own. Um, I know in my particular case, I ended up turning to my family in order to be able to help me get through some of the different things that, like I was in a northern posting, uh, and I was the only police officer there,
Hmm.
and ended up having to deal with a death by suicide. So I ended up having to do the investigation, and then ended up having to transport the the remains, the body, to the closest morgue, which was 8 hours away by police vehicle, 40 below weather, and um, and no one else, no one else,
You were
not
the
for.
guy.
I was it, yeah.
Yeah. I think about that. And okay, so the three things: it's okay to reach out, be able to listen, and with that listening, make sure there's confidentiality there, and then find a support group of some sort. Those are the three things.
What was the other one? There was one other one. Support.
Those are three things that to me that
Okay.
makes a lot of sense. Like, like reaching out, and sometimes it's the hardest thing. Like, I'm going through something right now, and I reached out to somebody, and I was afraid it was a big piece of news, I guess, and so with that, I carried a lot of weight with me. I certainly find that when I reach out and I give that person that big piece of news, there's empathy and there's understanding, but it wasn't as big a piece of news to them as it is to me. The reaching out part, I think many times it's harder in our own minds until we actually get to it and we realize, oh my goodness, the receiver, if it's the right receiver, the right person who will give us that confidentiality, they're going to take it a lot easier than it was for us to give it. So that's a big one. The idea of listening, and I love how you framed it through, if you're listening to somebody, and if I'm the person that just reached out, it's good for me to have an open set of ears. But the person who reaches out to you, if maybe somebody listening to this, somebody reaches out to you, it's good for you to have an open set of ears and to listen
Yeah.
and to be confidential about that. And then the other part, the support group, I mean, yeah, like community is everything. And the idea of, and we're going to get into the idea, you're not alone. That's something I really want to get into with you. But in this case here, when you look at it this way, the idea of you're not alone, actually, maybe we can go down this path now. I mean, like, because it's an interesting one, because I'm saying it right now, you are not alone. There are times where there are people who are 100% alone and they feel, they don't know when that is going to end, and how to end that. You've written about that. You've talked about that. You've written a book with the title "You Are Not Alone." You did a blog post in I believe it was March or February of this year, where you talked about that. But the idea of a support group, going and being in a place where there's some similar dialogue that may not be your situation, but it's a situation that's similar enough where there's learning happening at all different levels, whether it's somebody who's just going through it, or maybe they're on the tail end, they've gone through it and they want to help somebody go through it. That's exactly what He Changed It's all about, right? Take something, leave something that take something that you need. You go into a support group and you hear all of these different perspectives. That is certainly going to assist you in helping you get through your perspective. So those three things that you just mentioned are fantastic. I do want to switch to the idea of you are not alone, because I really appreciated what you wrote in that post a few months ago. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because every situation is different, but there are some times where you may have the biggest support network in the world, but yet you are the loneliest person in the room. Loneliness is certainly one of the pain points of He Changed It that we are trying to help people with. Men, it's a huge pain point, the idea of being alone or feeling alone. Can you talk about that for a little bit, Doug?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's the best way to sum that up is there isn't a day that goes by that I haven't experienced some level of loneliness. And it's everything, and I think I've written this in, I can't remember where I put it, but everything is centered around couples.
Oh gosh, yeah. And for context, you lost Debra, was it in 2020, 2021?
21, yeah.
21, you lost Debra. And I mean, you talk about, this is the person that was with you through thick and thin as you went through a lot of this stuff and
Yeah.
evolved. And then you lost her. So I just wanted to give the context. And so
Yeah.
there's so many things that are geared to couples, aren't there?
Yeah, it's surprising. And then you add on top of that, I made myself a little note here because I didn't want to forget it, was most people don't know what to say.
Right.
So, whether they're the recipient of supposed support, or whether or not it's on the other side, where they're actually giving support or trying to help somebody get through something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, people just don't know. They don't know what to say, how to say it, and when to say it.
Is there a right answer to that? Is there a right answer to that when somebody doesn't know what to say to somebody who is freshly grieving? Is there a right answer? Is there a, what would you say to those people out there?
If you're grieving, tell me, let me know that you're going through the grieving process. And my obligation to you is that I'm going to ask, what is there that I can say and or do that will help you on your healing journey?
Mm-hmm.
So I can sometimes say the wrong things, but if I've asked beforehand and sort of, as part of what you're going through as part of your journey is extremely difficult for you. I know that, I went through some tough times, and the thing you have to be very careful about is that you don't stereotype that there's one type of individual who has, one type of grief to deal with. Everyone is unique, and how
Mm-hmm.
they approach and deal with things is very much a very unique journey to go on. And we, as people that are trying to provide that support, need to be mindful of that, and also to be sensitive to how you word things. An example was I had an individual at Debra's celebration of life, the individual come up and say, how sorry he was and everything else. And, uh, you probably would like to have some company, and, I'll make a point of getting a hold of you for, we'll go for coffee or go for a lunch or whatever. That was
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And no response. So
follow through. If you say you're going to do something, follow through.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you talk about grief before losing Debra in your practice and in your journey, or was it after her? And if you did talk about it beforehand, how did it change?
That's a good question. And to be honest, I don't recall having, other than when my grandmother passed away
Mhm.
and we had, some, when my father, we had some deaths in the family and we were processing and dealing with those. Um, I, I don't think, in fact, I believe very strongly that I had not experienced grief to the extent that I am experiencing, or yeah, that I am experiencing today back
Mhm.
then. So it's more, what's how would I describe that? It's more intense. It's
Mhm.
more, um, there's more questions than there is answers.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to deal with those and process those. And at the same time, I also know and understand that with grief, I need to be able to process Debra's loss, because the next time someone else in the family passes away, if I haven't processed her loss, it's going to make it extremely difficult for me to take on any other family member and be there to provide support for them.
I appreciate you. I appreciate your candor, talking about it, and the fact that you're able to talk about it the way that you are. And as you said, you haven't finished. Grief doesn't finish. It never finishes. It changes. You process it, like you say. In fact, grief itself is a process. Many times, a process that never ends. The fact that you're able to take that and make it a part of how you help people, how you mentor people, and teach people to mentor people. The fact that you have gone through it the way that you have in such a deep way, and you're able to help people go through that process is beyond commendable. I want to go back to the "you are not alone" thing, because I think we've provided some really good context for how somebody in your situation, yeah, you might feel alone, you might be alone. And boy, the idea, but yet we always hear out there, "Oh, you're not alone, oh, you're not alone, oh, you're not alone, we're in this together." You hear these things all the time,
Yeah.
and yet sometimes you're the guy that's sitting there going, "No, you don't get it, you don't understand, I am alone."
Well, and a good example of that is, and I actually got to observe this from a bit of a distance, was went to a funeral,
Hmm.
and there's, of course, all family, friends, and all the people from the funeral home were there to provide support and everything else. As soon as the funeral was over and they all had their share of coffee, tea, and dainties, everybody disappeared,
Hmm.
except for the people that had just lost a loved one. There was
Hmm.
nobody to be able to put a hand on the shoulder and say, do you need someone to talk with? Would you like to go for a coffee, bearing in mind whatever you commit to, you must follow through on, but
Hmm.
putting different things in place that I know that I can deliver on. And that kind of sounds kind of weird, but it's the truth. And the other part is that you want to be able to start to build a relationship with this person who is grieving, because that's what's missing in their life now, is a relationship, because they've lost their loved one, and there's no more there isn't a relationship left that you can hang on to and sort of say, I'm okay, I've look what I've got. No, you're not.
So for the guy that's alone, that's sitting there feeling alone right now, whatever it is they've gone through, or are going through, or are about to go through, if that person is somebody who brings you into their life, to say, yeah, I need a mentor to help me kind of get through what I'm getting through right now, and the clarity is there, as to what direction that they want to be in. You know, I'm going through the loss, whether it's of a marriage, of a loved one, of a job, and I'm feeling alone right now. I'm feeling isolated. You've got the clarity there. What are some of the steps that you would take them through?
I call it a scan or an assessment, and that sounds kind of different, but because what I'm trying to do is to be able to determine, number one, if they are grieving, to what extent, and what type of grief are they going through, so that
Mhm.
I'm in a better position to be able to support them. Um, and then the other aspect is, what other mental health issues are they struggling or dealing with at this particular time, that we need to sort of add to the list of things we're going to have a conversation about.
Mhm.
And I do that when I'm mentoring young entrepreneurs. In fact, I had one individual that um, I ended up, we did a virtual meeting the first time,
Mhm.
and I did my normal assessment sort of thing on the fly. And I went, "You're not telling me everything that you could tell me." And I said, "Before you go down that path, let me share some of the things that I've gone through, and so I opened up and showed my vulnerability. And as a result of that, that's what ended up helping them decide that, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. And when they did that, then we were in a better place to customize the mentoring approach that they needed to be able to use to go forward with, and did a complete 180, and we ended up expansion of the business, additional staff, a whole bunch
Hmm.
of things that we were able to do as a result of working on the specific column pillars, for lack of a better choice of words. But you know we we uh, we went down those different pathways to be able to give them the guidance that they actually needed in order to move forward successfully.
So the in this case here with the young entrepreneur, you know, when you think about a young entrepreneur, they want to get their business fired up. But the idea that their business got fired up was a byproduct of them working on themselves and getting past some of the blocks that they had. The byproduct was that the business grew because they worked on themselves first. Is accurate?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you come in, you do you know, you kind of assess, and it seems to me like step two there, right there, you're showing them that they're not alone. You know,
Right.
they're in a rowboat with a bunch of holes in the bottom of the boat. You're jumping in the boat, going, okay, well now you're not alone in the boat. Let's, you know, get the hammer and
Exactly.
nails and
Yeah.
start patching some holes, and going from there. Um, is it? Can you always establish commonality? Are there times where, like, for the most, not always, always is such a definite thing. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I like to say that on the show. We're not talking about like always, but most of the time when you sit with somebody who is open to understanding that they're not where they want to be and they want to go in a different direction, they're open to that. Most of the time, are you able to establish commonality?
Yes. Yes.
Why is that? Because I
Because
don't think it's just you, because you're teaching people to do what you do. So it's not just you. So what's the universal part about that where you can establish commonality with somebody else?
it's uh, there are differences. Yes, I would agree, but I'm very, very good at what I do. And
Hmm.
I don't say that very often, but I'm very good at what I do.
I
And
love we have the opportunity for you to say it today, sir. I love it. Isn't it
uh,
good to be able to kind of go, yeah, I'm good at what I do. I got some, that's good to be able to say that. I'm glad to give you that opportunity today, Doug.
yeah, well, thank you. I have developed, the best way to, I guess, describe it is what people that I come across, encounter, work with, all those sorts of things. The one thing they say, what is the common thing that when it comes to, oh, you're going to have a meeting with Doug Lawrence. Well, he is so calm, nothing upsets him, and it's a calming, calming. I can't think of the word, but
no, you've got I'm gonna say it for you, because I was gonna tell you this about your disposition. Your disposition is such that is calm for sure, safe definitely, non-judgmental absolutely. Like, it feels like when you hear something, you just process and respond without any, I don't want to say without emotion, because I also feel empathy. But your disposition is such that's very, very calming. And not just so that you're not just calm, but you're calming as well. So I'm going to throw that out there as well. I'm certain that I'm hitting the mark on a lot of those things that people would say about you.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely are. And
And because you've seen it, you've seen it. You've been an RCMP, like you've seen some shit. You've seen some horrible, like of human behavior, the results of human behavior, and whatnot. And for you to just be accepting of things, there's a lot of weight there that I'm certain, you bring to the table because of your life experience versus people that you teach to do this, because you teach people to do this too, right?
Yeah.
And the idea of being able to transfer that skill of saying, hey, you might hear some things here. You got to stay non-judgmental. You have to stay calm. You have to, like jump in the rowboat with the person, but don't upset the boat too much, kind of a thing,
Well, and it's also the aspect of, is this what I really want to do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can work with you sort of half-based, half-cocked off, and you won't get the same result versus working with somebody who really, truly wants to be there, wants to make a difference, and understands that, the journey is not always easy. There's lots of bumps, lots of big waves that you have to encounter as part of all of this. But at the end of the day, if you truly believe that you can make a difference, then you will make a difference.
Oh, I love hearing that. And to go back to the idea, like as you described at the beginning, what a mentor-mentee relationship is. The person who wants to be the mentor or wants to, I'm sure that there are people who are brought into this kicking and screaming. Meant to might be a better way to put it.
Yeah.
The people who are meant to do this as well. The idea that they get sharpened, that they grow too, that they expand, that they evolve, that they learn through every experience. Can you, like, I can't imagine that through all the years you've been doing this, Doug, that you could say you've learned from every experience, but it feels like maybe you learn from every experience, like every single person that you come into contact with and you do this with, whether you're training somebody to do what it is that you do, through TalentC, or people that you're actually helping, clients that you're actually helping. Is everything a learning experience for you now at this point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Every single, the one thing I tell people is that I'm a very lucky person, because every time I come away from a mentoring relationship, I have learned something at the beginning, at the middle, and at the end of the relationship that makes me just that much more better at what it is I'm doing, and gives me the advantage of some learned or lived experience that I may not have had before.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. I appreciate that very, very much. It's the idea of being somebody who can be aware enough to learn by helping others. I mean, to me, it's a very appealing notion. When you were talking about it earlier, it's like, wow. I think that there are a lot of people out there, if you describe it that way and you paint that kind of picture, there's a lot of people who would want to kind of look into this. Do you show people how to do it I don't want to say, part-time makes it sound so it has such a connotation to it. But really at the end of the day, there are people out there who might be, locked into the job that they have, might not be necessarily a passion, but it's paying the bills and they're getting some sort of fulfillment out of it, but it's not really. But then they hear about something like this. Can you do something like this as sort of a twin career?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I
Have you shown
I
people how to do that?
I can do that.
Cool.
I can definitely do that because the 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 bumpy road that we'll probably end up experiencing is worth the effort.
Yep.
If I can find the right people, whether they want to do it full time, half time, part time, whatever, any little bit will help because I have times where I know I'm going to need extra help,
Hmm.
extra people to help move ahead, and I sometimes don't have those people, and I don't have somebody that feels comfortable enough in being able to deal with things as part of their own lived experience and their own journey. They just, um, and it gets more and more challenging now that we've introduced grief mentoring into the picture as well.
Hmm. You said something about grief that I just it's a beautiful, beautiful idea, and it's that grief exists because love existed first.
Yeah.
And I just appreciated that sentiment so much, and then it also brings up a familiar sentiment that's in the cultural vernacular, and has been for centuries. Or it's better to have loved and lost than never have loved at all. The idea of that, and to me, those two statements, they feed each other, or they mirror each other perhaps a little bit. Um, I want you to talk about that a little bit because you've experienced that. You haven't just learned it from a textbook about human behavior and human emotion and all of that stuff. You've lived it. And if you wouldn't mind, there are people out there who are grieving, whether they're doing it silently, whether they're doing it alone, whether they even know it, maybe it's subconscious. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? The idea that, love had to exist for grief to exist.
It was we came I'm so I'm writing another book, and
Hmm.
that particular phrase came out of the research and stuff that we had done. And so thank you for doing that. I completely forgot about the phrase, and it's so powerful, so dynamic that it's definitely one that you want to put at the forefront of a conversation as long as you can remember what it is. But I think that I know for me there is there's that gap, there's that hole, there's something missing from what it is that I want to be able to do, would like to be able to do, need to be able to do. Uh, but I'm somewhat restrained from doing so because I haven't been able to, even after 5 years of Debra being away, I still struggle with how do I deal with her not being there. It's so much. I kind of chuckle, but I have when I go to bed at night, I have my pillows in a particular place so that it looks like there's another person in the bed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's become so realistic that I sometimes will reach over and pat, or I'll turn and I'll go to look. And I had thought that Deborah was there before because I can recall seeing her head, but when I turn and I look, the head's gone. And, all that's there is is a resemblance of her body. And
Hmm.
so then I'm trying to deal with that because I allow that to consume what should be my sleep time, and now it's become something else. And I want to make sure that I'm able to address it, deal with it, and not necessarily move forward, but just understand what all this is kind of about. That makes sense.
Oh yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, hey, there are guys out there who have lost a love, whether it's to death, whether it's to, a relationship ending, whatever. Hey, guys, it's okay to go buy that body pillow. You're not
Yeah.
alone. We're doing it right now. We're doing exactly what Doug's talking about here. We're telling you, you're not alone. It's okay. Go to HomeSense or wherever, buy the body pillow. Say it's for your dog. That's fine. But you could buy that. And I mean, yeah, the idea of like just something little like that, mechanisms to help us go through some of the times where we go through loss. And I mean, the idea of, everything is temporary. That's a really easy thing to say sometimes, but man, sometimes everything is temporary. It kicks you in the teeth. And I mean, there's all sorts of things that come with that. But as I'm hearing you talk, Doug, there isn't even a bone in your body that regrets meeting Debra in the first place to go through this. And I mean, as you go through this process, I think that will become even more, that concept will be even more alive as you move through it. And the idea that you've taken this and now that you're writing about it, even more so, my English 12, my wife at the time and I wrote a book, and my English teacher read it, and he got back to me. He goes, you finally have something to write about. I'm going to ask you, you're an RCMP member, serving, again, I say thank you for your service at the beginning of this thing, as I do to everybody who's served. You've never stopped serving. You really haven't.
No.
And I go back to that person when you were doing that. If you would have told, maybe you're at year 13 and a half or 12 and a half, halfway through your 25-year run. And you're in a squad car, or a squad SUV, whatever it was back then. And somebody says to you, hey, guess what? In the future, you're going to create a business to do with teaching, with mentoring people, serving people that way, teaching others how to do that. And you're going to write 3-4 books now. Do you think that guy would have believed you?
Definitely not when it came to the 4 books. Like that came out of, I have no idea whose idea that was.
Wouldn't have called it though. Wouldn't have called it.
No. Because I think back and I don't recall there being the opportunity. The opportunity, I guess, was always there, but
Sure.
I couldn't see it. So therefore I didn't, react to what was there. But the writing has progressed, just as much as the mentoring journey has progressed. And so, started out with a book which was accumulation of all the blog articles I'd written over a period of time. It was kind of mentoring 101. Then the next book that was You Are Not Alone, which was PTSD and mentoring and how that could go. And then the next book was Grief, the Silent Pandemic. And then the 4th book, do I have it written down? I do. The title of the next book is What Remains, a story of love, loss, and living forward through grief.
Is that a working title, or are you basically at the 1 yard line with this thing and just about to release it?
It's a working title. Yeah.
As you've written these books, the one that's the blog collection, that's fantastic. It's cool. That's cool too, because people who've always wanted to write a book or something like that. How to Eat an Elephant, one bite at a time. The idea that you did so many little or smaller blog entries. You did so many of them that they could become a book. Look at that. You did it. How'd you write the book? Well, one blog at a time.
Yeah.
And that's very cool. But then the other ones, the idea of the stories becoming, it feels like they're getting more and more personal as you go, just from a perspective standpoint. A lot like journaling as well. As you're writing, it's just like when you're mentoring, you get as much out of it as the mentee gets. Writing the book, I assume there's also that reciprocal value.
It's very difficult and very challenging to bring all of those lived experiences into a book. I find that emotionally it's draining. And there are days where that I am writing that I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue or not, just because I'm pulling, like in this next book, I've pulled some lived experience, or I guess it would be lived experience, when my grandfather was still alive on the farm, and I relate to a couple stories with him that I've included in this next book that weren't there before. And because I didn't get to spend as much time with him as I would have liked before he passed, it's a trauma of its own.
I appreciate the fact that you're going through the effort, and hard work pays off. And I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work to be able to do that. Like I said before we hit record, time gets so slippery when we do these things here. It goes really quick. The best people for people to find you is your website, right? TalentC.ca. You're also on social media. If people want to reach out to you, Doug, and take a look at what it is that you do, where's the best place for them to reach you?
They, definitely the website, but I'm fairly, so you could DM me on LinkedIn. And you can also
Are you Doug James Lawrence on LinkedIn?
No, I don't. I think it's Douglas
Lawrence there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. On LinkedIn. You can DM me there.
And then I'm very open to, if you want to send an email message direct to me, I would be truly blessed to have that conversation. And my email is doug.lawrence, LAWRENCE, at TalentC, so the word talent with the letter C on the end, .ca, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can.
I can't thank you enough for this today. And again, it's so inspiring to me when I see somebody do something hard and that inspires them to want to make the world a better place. And that's certainly what you've done. And it feels like that's a cumulative, route in you making your way through this world, and it seems to be the case that even when adversity or some of these setbacks hit, some of these earth-shattering setbacks, the most personal ever whatsoever, that you're able to take it and use it to help make the world a better place. Not necessarily an easy road, to be a mentor, to help people in that respect, to jump in their boat with them while it's got holes in it. Yet at the same time, you can certainly feel the fulfillment that it's given to you. Doug, thank you so much for everything that you do for this world. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on to heCast today and talking a little bit about it. There's a lot of guys out there who are going to have, like to say on the show, good food for good thought. So thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you for the opportunity, and God bless all your people that are watching in today.
Thank you so much. I say it all the time. This is why we do the show, having these conversations. Hopefully, there will be somebody out here who will be, dare I say, inspired to make a change, to make a movement, whatever that looks like, to move forward, to get out of the place that you are right now and move to a better place, whatever that looks like. Maybe you're flying high right now and you want to fly even higher. I mean, it's not just adversity. Sometimes the adversity is that we just want to have an even better life and move forward. There's certainly room for that. That's certainly what Doug talks about. And the idea of, are you a mentor? Are you a mentee? Is it something that you want to look at doing? I think it's worth the question for yourself. This has been another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.